You're listening to the Miracles in Meat podcast. I'm Shane Thibodaux, a fourth-generation butcher at one of the oldest meat markets in the world. My great-grandfather started this business by slaughtering one cow or pig at a time and selling the cuts door-to-door on horse and buggy. Today, our products are enjoyed across the globe. I will attempt to give you some insight as to how we got here and explore the challenges we've had along the way. At Bourgeois, our mission is to preserve our heritage generation after generation through legendary Cajun flavors and the development of relationships, not customers. Since 1891, Bourgeois has maintained age-old culinary traditions that fuel the South Louisiana lifestyle. Over the past 133 years, our Cajun products have gained global recognition, and for tens of thousands of folks around the world, the Bourgeois Cajun Lady logo is a symbol of home. Today, the fourth-generation butchers sit at the 9-foot maple block with loyal customers to discuss the adventures, skills, and passions that guide each of their legacies. These conversations will become priceless resources for future generations of any industry. This is our way of maintaining the spirit, purpose, and traditions of our lost arts in a world of change. 133 years, 4 generations. We're just getting started. All right, episode 2 of the Miracles in Meat podcast. Episode 1 was with Donald Bourgeois, the third-generation owner of Bourgeois Meat Market. If you missed that one, be sure to go listen. Today, I'm with Donald's son, Beau Bourgeois, who is the fourth-generation owner. Beau is my older cousin, and I've looked up to Beau ever since I can remember, and I'm very lucky to have been by his side as he expanded this 130-year-old family business with a second location that opened up in March of 2023. Beau and I have been through a whole hell of a lot together, and I feel like there's so much more left for us to accomplish, and I'm very excited to work with Beau. I'm not exaggerating when I say that Beau is who I would consider to be the most intelligent person I've ever met. It's very overwhelming, and honestly, it's exhausting at times for us normies. You know, I remember all the things I had to learn in school as a kid, middle school, high school, all of the things. You know how it's really hard to remember all those dates and all those events and formulas and names and all that boring stuff. Well, Beau not only remembers all of that stuff, but he can apply it in front of your face in real time in actual scenarios and actual problems that need to be solved. And I got to watch that over the past, 10 years. And it's fun, man. It really is fun. I love working with Beau, and he is absolutely the right guy for the job. So let's get a bit more into his brain and see what we can dig out. Let's go, Beau Bourgeois. Beau, what you got? You're my cousin, and I know almost everything about you, but no one else does.
Yeah.
Maybe not the people that are going to hear this. So we're going to try to fade in an intro and then get into some deeper things with you. But first, this will be fun for me to learn. Tell me about maybe your first memories of the meat market. I have my first early memories, but I guess I don't really know yours. I don't know, how far back you can remember and what that was like.
How far back I can remember? So my parents got divorced when I was 3, and I lived with my mom, but every weekend that I was at my dad's house on Saturdays, I would come to work with him. So we're open 7 to 1, and trying to think of how old I was that I can remember, but I don't know, 7, 8 years old, I'm sure. And so I would hang out with Dad, answer the phone, not really do any work. I was a little kid, but just talking to everybody and seeing how the place ran. And there was probably 5 or 6 workers back then, and I would just wait until I could see people playing outside at Mama and Papa's house across the street, and then I would go over there and play the rest of the day. So that's probably my first memories of the market.
So if you're standing in front of the market, or you're standing in Papa's front yard, which is the yard directly across, and you're looking at the market, how was it different? How was that view different?
when I was a kid, even up until probably high school, probably up until Katrina. So the whole parking, well, for sure, the front of the market was smaller. We added that on in like 2011. But more importantly, there was also no parking lot on the left side at all, where that gravel parking lot is. There was a very narrow path that was like really overgrown. There was a chain link fence that you had to walk on the side of the market to get around to the back to get in. And there was a old man named Leander that lived in that house. And the main thing I remember about that house is that you could barely see it. The whole yard was overgrown and everything. But he was an old man, and he passed away, I'm guessing, in the early 2000s, and Dad wound up buying the lot. The Hansons actually lived in there for Katrina. So they lived in New Orleans.
That.
Yeah. So in 2005, they lived in that house. And then at some point after that, they moved the house off of the property, and Dad turned it into a parking lot. So it did look a lot, I would say a good bit different. The building itself maybe didn't look a lot different. We only added on like 400 square feet in the front right there. And then the parking was the big difference. You could only park in front of the store, and that included employees.
Right.
So there was a lot of parking going on across the street. And for Christmas, I mean, cars would park all the way down to the bridge back there.
Yeah. I remember that house. I remember the pathway to get around the left side of the market.
It was a little sketchy, huh?
I remember carrying a pirogue from Papa's house through that gap and then into the bayou. And then the bayou was actually beautiful back then. You had trees on both sides.
Yep, you couldn't see the road.
It was very pretty.
Yep.
I remember the water being cleaner and just looked nice. Looked like a bayou and not a ditch.
You didn't realize you were in town. It felt like you were in the middle of a swamp or the woods or something. Right. It was really cool. Of course, being a kid too changes your perception. But I remember we called them the boys, but it was Nick, Jason, and Brody.
The boys.
And yeah, we would do that. We'd take that pirogue all the way into those bridges as far as we dared. Each time we go a little farther. Lots of spiders under those bridges. It's fun.
Yeah, and the main street was a two-way on one side.
Not
then, but before then.
Well, yeah, originally it was just a gravel road
right
on the far side of the bayou, and this side was a 2-lane, not a one-way.
And for those of you who don't know, our great grandfather, he would slaughter a cow or a pig, and he would wrap up the cuts, the fresh cuts, and he would hit that road right there. It was an old gravel road. He would hit that road on a horse and buggy and go door to door, and he would just make sales and wouldn't come back till it was gone. So we've come a long way since then.
You couldn't in those days. There was no refrigeration. So the whole cow had to get sold that day, and then whoever bought it had to eat it that day.
Right. So yeah, you were young, and you were it was kind of a daycare for you of sorts. Yeah. That's kind of my memories too. I remember wrapping a little bit of jerky for customers and standing on a little stool. And I remember when Miss Karen and Jenny and Miss Kathy would let me wait on customers. They would basically just tell me what questions to ask, and then I would ask it. And when the customer gave me the answer, I would just look at them for what to do next. And they would let me give them the total. And I would say, okay, it's $5.75. And then they would give me the money, and then I would just give it to Karen. And she would say, okay, now give them back $1.20. And then I would give it back. But yeah, I remember that.
When we would get busy, I was little and try to help and wait on customers, I'd ask somebody what they need. And like, if it wasn't something easy that I knew how to get.
Skip.
Yeah, skip.
Pass.
I would be like, listen, they're going to help you in just 1 second. Next. And if they wanted something easy, like a pound of hog's head cheese or something, I could get that. And then I'd put it on the scale, and I'd have to jump up and hold myself on the counter. Because you remember those dial scales, you couldn't just look up at them. You had to be at the right angle. So I have to hold myself up at the counter to get the price, and then hop down and write it on the pack.
Mm-hmm.
Some people might have got charged the wrong amount in those days.
Sure. No problem. It's for the kids. So, all right, tell us a little bit about your family.
Okay, my wife is Chelsea. She's from a little bit all over the place, but mostly like Napoleonville, I guess. And met her in college at Nichols. We got married in 2014, so we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. And we got 4 kids. My oldest is Theodore Bourgeois. We call him Teddy. He's 8. And then next comes Thomas. He's about a year and a half younger. And then the girls are next. So Rosie is 4, about to be 5. And Adeline just turned 1.
How'd you convince Chelsea to marry a butcher?
I think she wasn't thinking about that.
She was just after the dance moves.
Yeah, definitely the dance moves.
And yeah, you got 4 kids and y'all are doing the kids stuff right now. Y'all are doing sports and traveling the country for Pee Wee baseball.
Not yet. Well, sort of. We do go to Hammond and all that. They just finished up travel baseball. The boys are on the same team. And they do, anytime they're in between sports, they're doing jiu-jitsu, of course.
Of course. And Beau is a black belt in guerrilla jiu-jitsu.
Sure, that's fair to say.
Yeah. No big deal. We won't talk about that. What's your favorite products that we're selling right now? What's like your go-to? Let's do this. What's your what's the things you always take home? And what's your favorite product right now? Maybe a new product that we have, or just something that's just always been your favorite little treat.
Okay, so the things I take home the most often are hamburgers and pork chops because, we're always on the run. But my favorite things to take home forever has always been calf cuts, stuff that's about to go bad. And we do a lot of roast too. It's easy to. What's
a good calf cut to grab on a weeknight?
Like I said, whatever's going bad.
Whatever's going bad. So
you can. They're all good, and you just smother them down.
So
taste delicious.
Speak more on that. How'd you learn how to just do that?
Papa and my dad. I think that's the only meat my grandpa and dad ate growing up. Was the stuff that wouldn't sell.
Right. So he's talking about. We have a cooler full of meat. We've got tenderloins and we've got the ribeyes and we've got all the great stuff. But what Papa would do and Uncle Donald would do is save that stuff for the customers because that's how you make money. So the stuff that hasn't sold, it's a few days old and it's time to do something with it. That's what goes home and that's what gets cooked and that's what feeds the family. And that's been the tradition. That's what they did. That's what our parents grew up on. And with that comes maybe a different cooking style than most are used to. Because you kind of have to know what to do with some of these cheaper cuts of meat. It's like the calf, the cuts, the veal cuts, they're all grass-fed, grass-finished, which is a much different taste and texture than what everyone else is used to cooking. It's not a restaurant style flavor. So if you take what are you taking, like a neck chop, a old rusty neck chop home, and what are you doing with it?
I like rusty. Just to add to that a little bit, so the calf cuts are kind of like a dying thing these days. Nowadays we probably get, 1 calf a week, maybe 1 calf every 2 weeks or something. But in years past, dad and Papa and all, they would slaughter multiple calves every week to fulfill customer orders. And a big part of Papa's business for a long time was slaughtering other people's calves and cutting and wrapping it for them. So yeah, people don't cook that way anymore, and they're not used to eating that. And it's also not like how you say this. It's not a. You might have to cut my stumbling, but it's not like an industrialized thing. Like you can buy a box of ribeyes, for example. You can buy a box of tenderloins. Mm-hmm. You can buy a box of chuck roasts. You can't buy like calf chuck chops. It's not something that is sold.
It's not
by
like mass
packers
produced and packaged.
Yeah, thank you.
You can't. Yeah, you can't buy a case of chuck chops. Right.
And so yeah, customers have always gotten a little aggravated, and I understand the frustration, but when we break a quarter at a time, either a front quarter or a hind quarter, and you can't just, if everybody wants the number 7s, for example, which are still really popular, you can't just break another front because you're out of 7s. You have to wait till the rest of the cuts are sold. So yeah, as soon as you start breaking and cutting into the meat, it starts going bad a lot faster.
Right. So, and we really rely on those customers that they have these recipes because they were passed down from their grandparents, and they know how to cook the veal sirloins, and they cook round steaks, and they do all this stuff. And we rely on those customers to show up, because if they don't show up for 2 or 3 weeks, then we're sitting on meat that now we have to take home and cook.
Right. And now my kids are sick of rice and gravy. I don't think they'll ever be sick of rice and gravy, though.
So, as quickly as possible, explain how to cook neck chop.
All right, there's like 3 pretty easy ways, but you get them sliced relatively thin, maybe a 1/2 inch, but some people like them a little thicker. Here's maybe an easy way that most people could already do it that know how to cook. You just season them, brown them, take them out, make a roux, add onions, put them back in, a little water, cover it till it's tender. That's simple.
Boom.
So if you want to do it even faster, you dust them in flour first before you pan fry them with some oil, and that kind of makes your roux. Then you take them out, add your onions, cook them down, and then put it back in a pot, a little water, cover it.
Simple.
Down the hatch.
That's it. Salt and pepper.
Yep.
I think me and you both learned to cook with a very simple preparation, I guess. There's not really crazy complicated recipes. Most of the things we cook probably follow just a few key principles, and we do that with everything. And
they're simple, and they do take time, but I do think that's why Papa and Mama and my dad and all are such good cooks, is that they had to learn how to cook stuff that people didn't want, the less desirable parts of the animal.
Right. Anyone can make a porterhouse taste good.
Right.
But
and in 15 minutes instead of 2 hours.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, to take a old nasty neck chop,
and you need to make it taste good and split it 9 different ways because they had 7 kids.
You got to get the kids to like it.
I don't think they ever cared about that back in those days.
You're right.
Here's the food.
Sorry, y'all had to go through that. It's before they had food. That was a long time
before they had grocery stores.
All right, so you graduated from Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Played football, dabbled in some martial arts, some jiu-jitsu, some what else?
That's about it. I was real big into football in those days and took that pretty seriously. And then, I started doing jiu-jitsu like sophomore year. So 2002-ish. I graduated in 2005.
And hunting and fishing throughout.
Yep. Any chance, well, just put it this way. Anytime Dad called and there was anybody, I was going.
Right. Pretty big in our family. I think most of the men in the family were avid fishermen and hunters.
Yeah, we did. We mostly fished growing up. Dad got into deer hunting a little later, but we would still go probably once a year. And then did a little duck hunting for a while. But mostly I remember going to Uncle John's camp, which was mostly a fishing camp in Dularge. But man, once a year, beginning of February, we would do, right after deer season ended, we would do a big family rabbit hunt with all the guys. And it was a lot of fun, and it was really weird.
What was weird?
You were there.
So the rabbit hunt was like a coming of age thing in the Bourgeois family, and you get invited to Uncle John's camp, maybe throughout the summer, and you go hydrosliding and you go maybe frogging and fishing and all this stuff and all the fun times. But the rabbit hunt was something different. The rabbit hunt was for the men and the big kids.
Yeah.
And I don't know, how old were we when we probably did our first?
Dude, you might have been 7 or 8. I might have been 10 or 11. Best guess. I
Could
don't know.
be.
Maybe
Couple
we're
20
low.
gauges. Maybe. I know I had a youth pump 20 gauge, and we would hit the levee, and we would walk and we would rabbit hunt. But
And
the
we were
rabbit
mostly
hunting,
the rabbit dogs.
right? We would go flush out the rabbits so the grown-ups can shoot. But the focus of the rabbit hunt wasn't necessarily the rabbit hunting. It was more so the shenanigans back at the camp.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It got weird. Lots of loud noises, lots of horns.
Vacuum cleaners.
Yeah.
Bridges being opened and closed.
They would take a PVC.
Donuts in the bayou.
Right. It would take a 12-foot, maybe 3/4-inch PVC pipe and blow into it as hard as they can for as long as they can, which was like, thinking back now, some of our uncles can do that, hold that note for 4 or 5 minutes.
At least.
And or where they might have been passing it on. I don't know. I've seen a cigar smoked. I've seen like a 1-foot cigar smoked out of
never
a
seen a normal size
15-foot
cigar at that camp.
right.
Ever.
Lots of stuff. Lots of vacuums. And you may or may not be woken up by a vacuum running across your face.
Or put to sleep on.
Well, yeah, right. But yeah, rabbit camp was the rabbit hunt was special times. And it's about time we start introducing something like that with our kids.
Yeah.
Something a bit scary, exciting, and dangerous. I'd say would be the key factors there. So you graduated from Vanderbilt and then off to college.
Yep. Went to Nichols. Graduated in 3 years in computer science. After so I chose computer science because I don't know, computers seemed cool back in those days. And then after about 1.5 years, I realized that I hated computers and programming especially. But I was like, I'm only 1.5 years away from graduating. So I just buckled down and finished it. I was a bit of an idiot in college in general, if anybody knew me back then. But I did do the coursework and graduate quickly because I didn't like it. But after I graduated, I got interested in I had to take a lot of math classes for computer science, and I've always liked math. And I decided I wanted to try to get a graduate degree in math. And Nichols did not have a PhD program, but Tulane did. And I decided Tulane sounded pretty cool. It's obviously really expensive, and hard to get in. So I applied, and it was kind of a deal where first I have to get in. And second of all, if I don't get an assistantship that will pay for everything, then it's off the table. But all of that worked out. And yeah, I was in a PhD program for 2 years, and I probably I'd done most of the coursework, but I still had like 4 years left to do. Like, it takes that much longer to do your dissertation. And I was 24 at that point, and I was like, no, this is dumb. I'm going to be working at the market anyway. It's time to call it quits.
So you had already decided that the market was next at Tulane or at Nichols or before then?
Say that again?
When you actually decided that you were going to pursue the meat market, I'm not sure if did that happen in high school or college?
I don't know. I guess I always knew that it was going to happen. I guess I didn't think much about it. It's not like I ever considered doing anything else. Yeah, I don't know. The school part was just for fun.
Mm-hmm. And then you came back after Tulane, and you taught some classes at Nichols, or did you teach at Tulane as well?
Yeah, so that's part of the assistantship deal is
okay.
You teach classes, and you teach like basically undergrad classes, and you get a tuition waiver and a small stipend. It's $17,000 a year.
And I heard that your class was pretty hard to pass.
No, that was at Nichols. The Tulane, everything was cool. Yeah, when I came back, the head of the math department, his name was Dr. Beslin. He had reached out to me to see if I'd be interested in teaching some summer courses. It was night classes, and I had some experience doing it already. It sounded fun. The pay wasn't really a factor. But yeah, I had fun doing that. I did that for a couple summers. And yeah, I might not have been known as the easiest teacher.
Good.
I think I had a 25% pass rate.
And is that around the time you took your backpacking trip?
I took the backpacking trip in the middle of Tulane. So I was at Tulane for 2 years. And then the summer in between, I had met. So there's not too many Americans in math and physics graduate programs in this country. A lot of Asians and a lot of Europeans. They made up more than 50% of the like my incoming class. And anyway, yeah, I'd made some friends with a bunch of people throughout Europe, Germany, Cyprus, England. And my mom had booked a thing through Nichols, like a European tour. I don't know what you call it, but it was through Nichols. A professor came with us. It was a giant group of us. It was 2 weeks, and it was really cool. But she was paying for that, and so I decided, like, hey, I might just stay the rest of the summer by myself and go visit some of my friends that were home for the summer. So yeah,
He just called them up and said, "Hey, I'm coming over."
well, we had talked about it before I left, but yeah.
And where'd you go?
Oh, I'd have to look back. I think it was 10 or 11 countries. I went a little bit everywhere. So England, Germany, Amsterdam, Italy, Norway, Cyprus, Czech Republic, a bunch of places.
Mm-hmm.
It was really cool.
And I
just had a backpack. I had 2 shirts.
What kind of
2
shirt?
shorts.
Tap out shirt?
Wool, of course.
Oh yeah, you had icebreaker.
Wool only. Yep.
You had merino wool before it was cool.
Before it was cool.
Wait, didn't you have a First Light before it was cool?
Yes.
You had
on
an
accident,
old
though.
First Light, like from when?
2010.
Yeah, that's OG.
Yeah.
That's a OG First Light consumer.
I was really just looking for anything merino wool for thermals,
Right.
for hunting.
Function, not fashion.
Yeah.
That was before Sitka.
Yeah.
Man, that's pretty special. You should never get rid of that First Light.
Oh, I still wear it. It's great. It's actually better than the stuff they make now, I think.
So you got to do the whole traveling thing. You got to do the subway systems, and did you take some trains and all of that?
Trains were the best way to travel. They were cheap. And yeah, I would grab a bottle of wine and a sandwich. And I had a little tiny laptop. I would just watch movies for like the 6-hour ride and drink a whole bottle of wine and eat a sandwich.
Would you recommend that to the college grad traveling?
If it's still affordable, yeah. I did it for really cheap.
I know a lot of people are doing the hostels and stuff like that, and I think that's the way to do it if you're in college.
Yeah, I did hostels when I had to, but I liked sleeping in like train stations and airports because that was free.
Interesting.
And all the flights that I took, dude, I don't think I ever paid more than $50 for a flight. Most of them were $20 or less. And of course, with that comes like the flights leaving at 3 a.m. or 5, like ridiculous hours. And so
you have to stand up the whole time.
Well, that was a bonus for me because it saved me a night that I had to pay at a hostel. I'd find some stairs to sleep under.
And there's that math, you know. So
I take it back. The most expensive flight I took was coming home. And that was $200. I flew from Norway to Iceland, Iceland to New York, New York to Atlanta, Atlanta to New Orleans. All those flights were $200.
Yeah, not gonna happen these days.
I was really good at finding flights back then.
You'd be in for 2 stacks these days. But you did a lot of traveling growing up too, right? You were always in a camper with your grandpa.
Yeah, so yeah, my mom and dad got divorced, and my mom's mom passed away like the next year. And then my mom and my grandpa were both teachers or principals. And so they were off all summer, and Papa had a camper. And yeah, every summer we would take off pretty much the whole summer as a kid. And we'd go all over the place from Yellowstone to Washington, D.C. to wherever. Yep.
That's awesome. And then now you're doing it with your kids.
Yeah, we got a camper because obviously I loved it growing up, and I wanted my kids to experience that too.
It's cool. So after college, you came back and you started your active pursuit of the meat market. How did that happen, and what was that like? Were you just, do you remember like your first day, like, full time, like I'm here permanently, I'm full time, and now what?
I guess I don't remember it like that. I had always worked here in college and usually over the summers and, well, every Christmas. And, from the time I was probably 12 years old, every Christmas, as soon as school was out, I was here 80 hours a week. And I already knew everybody. It's not like, I guess it didn't feel like anything. Just felt like the next thing.
Was there anything you weren't allowed to do at, high school age? Like, were you allowed to like cut on the saw?
Dad never really had rules like that. It's not that he ever said, don't cut on the saw. It's just I knew not to.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Do you know how he is? That's a good question, though. I don't remember when I started cutting on the saw, but I was in college.
Mm-hmm. And when'd you learn how to smoke jerky?
I learned how to smoke jerky around that time in 2011, 12, when I started full time. That was always something super top secret. And at that time, we still had two guys that had been here, 15, 20 years at that point. And they were the two smokers. And like, it was just their job. Nobody else was allowed to touch it.
Chris and Calvin.
Yeah. But
did they teach you how to smoke, or did your dad teach you? Remember?
I don't. It was probably Cal. It was either Chris or Calvin.
Yeah, I got a little bit of everyone. I was able to get some Calvin, some you, and a little bit of your dad.
Was Chris on by the time you started?
Yeah. He was there through high school and stuff, but I was not learning how to do that in high school.
Yeah.
So what was like your role? Did you kind of switch? You had already done everything, but did you have like a specific role?
I didn't. At first, I was just another worker. I guess I was a good hire in that.
Were you like a back of house?
Trained.
Were you like back of house?
Back of house, yeah.
Yeah, back of house.
Pretty much back of house. But in those days, everybody did a little bit of everything. And so I was, I spent 80% of my time in the back of the house. But for lunch, when the girls up front would go to lunch, the guys in the back would go up front and wait on customers and cut meat and do whatever. So it was always a little bit of everything. But yeah, most of my time was in the back of the house. Yeah.
What did you like to do back there?
So if you ask anybody here, it's probably their least favorite thing. But my favorite thing always was hanging jerky. It's monotonous. It takes 2 hours every morning. But to me, it was my favorite part of the day because, everybody just got there. Everybody's waking up, having their cup of coffee. And yeah, just some of the conversations that we've had at that jerky stick.
Boy. If we would have had a podcast back then, huh?
Yeah, dude.
Some conversations. You're right. You learn a lot about a lot.
And we
as
had
a
characters.
kid,
we always had characters. Like,
yeah,
they almost weren't real.
Man.
People like Buddha.
Boy, I learned a lot from Buddha.
Yeah, he was like a movie character. He was awesome.
Yeah, you hear a lot of profanities back there, and you just learn how to grow up.
Yeah,
if it's
definitely rated R.
It's a grow up now or never type of situation.
Yeah.
And I guess that's still how it is. We have some part-time high school kids, and I'm sure they're learning a ton. So, Papa was still there at this time. I'm assuming he was kind of active, kind of there daily, maybe.
So, as a kid, Papa worked every day and worked. Like he still, every time I was there as a kid, he was there and working.
He's cutting on the saw,
stuffing in the back too. He was still stuffing sausage, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but I'd say, if we just separate 2011 when I started full time, at that point, and throughout the rest of his life, he still came to the market every single day, but it was usually to wait on customers. And he still cut on the saw, and he still mostly just BS with the customers. And yeah, it was always great when you saw him riding his bike down the gravel road.
Yeah. And as he got older, he kind of stopped pedaling, and the road has a gradual decline from his house to the market. And I remember seeing him, he would just hold both of his legs out wide, and he would maybe give like 1 or 2 pushes throughout the whole journey. He would just kind of push off the hill and just coast all the way across. And he would always cut his brakes off of his bike as soon as he got them.
You didn't want to.
Sure if he used that for something else, maybe somewhere in the barn or on a boat, maybe. But he didn't have brakes, and he didn't want to stop his momentum if the cars were passing once he got to the road. So he would just make that curve, and he would just, side hill the road until there was an opening in traffic and cut it across.
It was always terrifying. And then he'd have to run into the building to stop.
Right. We did see him get hit by a car one time. My car backed into him. Just kind of knocked him over right in front of the window.
Yeah.
Got to see that. And then, of course, there was a time where me and you heard a big splash one day, and we opened the door, and there's a Toyota Camry in the bayou, and Papa was the one driving it.
Yeah. That was a wild little afternoon. We had just closed up. It was about 5:05 or so, and me and Shane and Phil were, I don't know, talking about something in the office before we left, and we heard an unmistakable splashing sound. And it didn't dawn on me at first what it was, but I remember you immediately saying, I think Papa's in the bayou, taking off out of there. I don't know how you knew that's what that sounded like, but you knew right away. And yeah, I followed you out there, and he didn't drive it into the bayou. Let me say that. Not the way that it was positioned. He jumped it into the bayou.
Right.
Okay.
He launched it.
It was all the way into the middle of the bayou. It wasn't just like his front end kind of went in. And yeah, I remember both of us jumping into the bayou at the same time. I forget who was on what side of the car, but we had to pry the door open because it's wedged down into the mud. And I'm like, Paul, you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm fine. And we're like, let me help you out. And he's like, no. He made us take his groceries first. We had to save his groceries before we could save him. You remember what the groceries were?
Yeah, I remember trying to pull him out the driver's side, and I have him by the arm, and he's pulling against me, trying to go the other way. And because Beau was on the right side, the passenger side, and I thought he was trying to go out towards you. And I got him by the arm, and he's leaning the other way. I'm like, no, Paul, come this way. I already got the door open. Well, he sticks his arm in the leg room of the front passenger seat, and the muddy water was all the way up to the seat. So floorboard to seat is just muddy water, and I can't see into it. And he's reaching down in there, and he pulls up a bag of shallots and a loaf of bread.
Yep, I remember that distinctly.
And
shallots and bread.
And he handed them to me, and he said, "Don't forget my groceries." Yep. And I do remember we had got him out. We pulled him out, and the first step he took outside of the car, his leg went into the mud, and he pulled up his foot with no shoe. And keep in mind, these shoes got to be 10 years old and overhauled several times.
Yeah.
And once we got on the bank, he realized that his shoe was gone, and I did have to go get the shoe. And
that's some deep, nasty mud too.
If you visit the new location in Gray, right when you come into the door, you look on the little half wall by the grocery section, and there's a picture of Pawpaw with the car behind him in the bayou, and he's holding up a pack of shallots and a loaf of bread. So that's something to see. Now you know the story.
Yep.
So what was it like working with your dad? That's maybe an uncommon situation for most. What do you remember? How was that hard? And yeah, just tell a few things.
So it's definitely tough working for your dad. If there's anybody out there that's done it, they'll know that. But I really did love it. I loved seeing him every day and talking to him. And I loved the work that we did. And I think we were a good team. We did that for almost 10 years before he retired. So I really liked it. And the thing that I actually missed the most about him retiring was I went from, seeing him and talking to him 8 hours, 10 hours a day to once a week now. It kind of sucks.
He's busy, man.
Oh,
Retired, and he's got a lot of things to keep him busy.
Oh yeah.
Which is good. You want him to not stop,
Yeah, that's how Papa did. I think that's a big part of why he made it to 97.
Yep.
But yeah, you know how that is. He's got a garden at the property on 308. He's got, he might have to go run 2.5 hours to the camp to get some well water for his illicit. Still, you just never know. You never know with him.
He had some things.
Yeah.
Some projects. Papa always had projects.
Oh,
He would always come across the street to the market with something he was making.
That's a fact.
They might make him a new spatula out of a piece of cypress he found, or you name it.
Yeah,
and
middle of the day, busy lunch rush. We cutting all kind of meat on the saw. He's like, hang on, bro, I need to saw for a second. All right. And yeah, he'll shave off a 3/4 of an inch of a piece of a block that he's using to build a rod holder in his boat or something.
Or a toilet.
Yeah. And I'm like, all right. And then he's already gone.
Oh
with
yeah,
his thing.
zinc.
And now we got to stop, take the saw completely apart and clean.
Yep. Notorious.
Oh yeah.
Yep. I think we're like that though. I think we know when we're on to something, it has to happen now.
Oh yeah.
And I think we got that from them. Man, you remember slaughtering any cows with Papa?
So, well, I guess to start off my slaughter experience, Dad stopped slaughtering. I'm gonna guess like around 2000, say. And so I would have been, 12 or something, 13. And that was something that I think they did it on like Mondays or Tuesdays maybe. But the point is I was never around for most of that. And of course, occasionally I got to, I got to go watch. I was never at the age or the point where I could help with any of it. But, they'd let me like shoot the cow or watch or clean up a little bit, but very limited experience with slaughtering while we did it. And then like later on when I was say after 2011, when I was here full time, there were just random occasions because Dad still liked doing it. So he'd take every opportunity he could. So Uncle Biff had cattle for a while that he'd slaughter one a year or something. I'm sure you were involved with one of those at some point. And there's another meat market around here, which I'll just leave at that. And, sometimes they had orders to fulfill and their butcher was out sick or something. And so they called Dad to go give him a hand for the day, and we do something like that. So I had pretty limited experience with that up until COVID. So with COVID, meat got really hard to come by. They shut down a lot of the slaughterhouses, and we don't really take no for an answer too good. So we still know people that got stuff. And so, yeah, we would get a cow. Now, keep in mind, this was only for our personal use, okay? Let me just put that caveat out there. But, yeah, we slaughtered several cows for COVID. And then the Fireman's Fair, we slaughtered some for that too. So that around that time is when I got the most exposure to it and got learned how to do it the right way and all the way. And one of them, Papa, well, Dad couldn't be there for some of them. And so, me and Papa did some too. That was really cool. Got some pictures of it.
I remember Uncle Biff come stop by for one or two too.
Yep.
And it's pretty cool to see him skin a cow after, I don't know how many years has he, skipped
Yeah.
doing that. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure
40
he did a
years.
bunch. So
Yeah.
Uncle Biff was the oldest. He was probably what 8 years older than Dad. So he did a lot of it in his younger days. And so, but yeah, dude,
It was cool.
40, 50 years ago, and he still got
It
it.
looked like he didn't forget
Right.
one single step.
Yep.
Very cool to watch. It's very much a lost art. And when you get to see those guys do that, you realize what it is. You
Yep.
know, it really is a skill. So before COVID, you had these dreams to expand the business and open up a new location. What was the trigger for that?
Well, that actually goes back way, way far. So in, let's say 2000, I'm going to guess, Dad bought some property near Highway 90, actually like right across the street almost from where we wound up building. And then, he bought that property with the plan of eventually building a new location there. Well, in maybe 2005 or 6 is when Dad bought out Uncle John, and that kind of went on the back burner for a while. And then Synergy Bank came along and made a great deal on it, so he sold the property to them, which that's where that Synergy Bank is, right there in Gray, near Highway 90. And then he turned around and bought the piece of property across the street from it on the bayou side. There was a house there. And that's where we ultimately did build the market. But that house actually I lived in for a little while when I came back from Tulane. What was the question again? Oh, okay. Yeah, how all that started. Okay. So 2010 or so, Dad is now thinking about doing it again. And he'd always been thinking about it. It was always, I think, a long-term goal of his. And the old market is just, we were outgrowing it. It was small. It was just not efficiently designed because Papa had just added on so many times over the years. You know, you have to walk through the front cooler to get to the back. It's old. Papa built it himself in the late 40s, early 50s, I guess. So we needed something. But anyway, 2010, 2011, I came home and Dad was still thinking about doing it. He decided he was going to hold off a little while longer, and he was going to add on to the old market. And that's when we added on that 400 square feet to the front. That's where the registers are. There's a little office back there. It's where the hot box is for the boudin burritos and stuff like that. And just over time, he still just, I guess he got to the point where he decided he was going to be retiring and decided that it needed to just be my problem. But yeah, so since 2011, it's been on my mind, and it's something that I've been working on.
And what'd you think about this location right here? Were you, I don't know, did you ever consider not doing it right here?
Yeah, I thought maybe Houma would be a better location for it. You know, but after talking to Dad and just, I guess, thinking on it a little bit, I decided to access the Highway 90 might ultimately be a smarter move. Plus the property, plus Dad had already bought the property.
Right. Yeah, 90 is a big corridor for the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And being right off of it really is a huge benefit, because that 6-minute drive from here to the Thibodaux store is a determining factor for some people.
Yeah.
If they have to go that far, they're not going.
And even if it's not the distance factor, it's the fact that you can see it from the interstate kind of.
So what's the steps you had to take? Like, how do you build a new location, and what's the scaling like when you double up on equipment and staff, and what was all that like? Do you remember thinking about how you were going to do it? Do you remember having a specific plan?
Yeah, it's all I thought about for a long time. You were there for the most of it, but my very first step was to realize that I couldn't do it by myself. I couldn't be in two places at once. The way that Dad ran the old market and the way that, I kind of learned from him to do it was he was kind of like a control freak, like a micromanager. He had his hand in everything. And of course, that's how I always was. And I'm like, well, that's physically impossible to do in two places at once. So the first thing I need is another person like me. And that's where you came in. So you were the first and most important step. And then from there, you were there for the rest of it. I mean, how many hours did we sit around with what you call that, grid paper? Just
Grid
drawing
paper.
floor plan after floor plan. There's thousands of them.
The graphing paper days.
Yeah.
We got pretty good with triple edge.
Yep. And a scale.
Yep. But yeah, I remember drawing up design after design after design and drawing up the individual rooms, and we drew equipment to scale, and we did that from when until when.
I mean, we did that for a couple years. And then, let's see, Dad retired in 18 or 19. And then I was like, okay, now we just need money.
Mm-hmm.
So it took a couple years to get enough money for, because we had talked to the bank to see what they needed to put down, kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And we had to make it work financially because, I owed Dad money at the time for the market, still do. And yeah, we were about ready to pull the trigger, and then a car crashed into the market in February of 2020. So February 2020, a white Mustang pulls into the market all the way. And
when you say all the way,
I mean, none of it was sticking out.
You mean into the parking lot?
None of the white Mustang was out of the building anymore. It's all the way in. We had some injuries, no fatalities. It was a bit of a mess. Thank God for the Perkles and everybody else that had a hand in that. And then a month after that, finally we're squaring stuff away, which the Baudouins actually were the ones that fixed that fixed up the market. I had already contacted them because they were the ones that were building the new market. And then, a month after February 2020, when the car crashed, we had a little something called COVID. The lockdowns and all that happened in March or April or whenever that was. And that was a whole nother nightmare. It turned out okay. We were all really nervous about it and weren't sure how we were going to make it. But yeah, it worked out great. And then the following year, we're ready to pull the trigger again. And then that summer of 21, we had Hurricane Ida. And I'm like, holy shit, dude, Ida was bad. Ida was real bad. But we came around after that, and that's when I think construction started not too long after that. Took about a year and a couple months. They probably started in January 22.
Mm-hmm.
Ish.
Yeah, there was several years of rendition after rendition of final floor plans and
oh yeah,
final
they're
2.0.
They're still on my computer.
And final never delete. We have folders and folders of final floor plans that are all incorrect. And yeah, and then you know all this planning is taking place, and then you finally get to see the equipment on site. And I remember coming right over here when it was just excavators out there and dropping off pylons and stuff. So what did that feel like when you get to see that stuff? Finally, something's moving.
Dude, once the walls were up, it was like up until that point I wasn't too impatient, but once the walls were up, I was like, holy crap, I can see it and feel it, and I want it now. Because yeah, it's so cool to see something that you've just dreamt about for so long. Yeah, you get to actually see it.
You can see where the toilets are gonna be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember walking the slab, and you just imagining a line of customers wrapped right here out the building, up to the counter.
Mm-hmm.
And you're imagining taking the trees of sausage and slinging it across the rail, across the back room, and you're picturing where the grinder's going to be and all this stuff. We've been doing it for so long, and we know all the processes and where everything goes. And this building isn't a whole lot different than our other concept of the old market. It's just more efficient and spread out and bigger. And again, we lived it on paper for such a long time. It's really like we knew where we were getting, just walking on the slab. You really understand where you're standing in the building.
Yeah.
Which is really, really cool. And then, yeah, you're right. Once the walls are up, it felt like this just thing, man. Just felt like we're in a factory, big industrial factory. Much different than the humble beginnings.
Yeah, it was really exciting. And so our vision, as you already know, but our vision was, we wanted everything to be exactly the same as at the old market. We just needed more space in each place. The only thing that we wanted to add different was we wanted a kitchen and we wanted some customer like retail area to put a few more things on the shelves. But other than that, everything's the same. We had the same guys build the smokehouses, old Mr. Landrum.
Mm-hmm.
We had
Hank.
Yep.
Hank and Hank.
Old Hank and his son Hank.
Boy, they did some building.
Yeah, they did a lot of stuff for Papa back in the day. But yeah, they built the smokehouses. We had the pots built to the same specs as the old pots. All of that stuff stayed the same. But some of the things that couldn't stay the same just because of the building design, for example, was like the meat railing. So if for those of you that have never seen the back of a meat market, there's this railing that goes throughout the building where it helps you move product around. So it's got these things called trees on them, which maybe look a little bit like a really dangerous tree that you can hang the meat on, or you can tie string around sausage and hang it on these trees. So as you're working, as you're bundling sausage or boudin, you can put it on the tree and then you slide the tree into the cooler. So you have to have, and same thing with the big hanging meat, you need a way to keep that off the ground and you can't set it on a shelf. So at the old market, all that's tied into the ceiling and joists and however Papa did that back in the day. But that wasn't an option here. We had higher ceilings. The ceilings are just like that, that hanging ceiling kind of thing. You're not anchoring anything to it. So we had to figure out a lot of stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we did.
Yeah, a lot of there was math involved for sure.
I'm sure somebody did so.
And lots of engineering and lots of making sure, lots of research.
Yep.
It was a big process, long process, very, very complicated. And I think that's the thing about this place is whether it's because we're stubborn or our ways really are the best for what we do, we did absolutely want everything to be a certain way. Even though someone could come up with a much easier idea, we were afraid of getting rid of the way that already worked,
So I feel the same way, but growing up, I would ask Dad, why do we put this in this, or why do we do this way? And his answer was always that's how Papa showed me, or that's how he did it, or whatever. So that's always been my answer for everything. And a lot of people don't like that or get that, whether they be in the building industry. And Kirby is the guy that did a lot of he's a welder, incredible welder that did a lot of the special stuff for our pots and rail system and all that. But yeah, I think he was ready to either bang me on the head or I was going to bang him on the head because he was tired of why he had to do it a certain way. I'm like, dude, I don't know why. And why doesn't matter. This is just how we want it. So yeah, there might be a better way to do everything that we do, but we're not going to find out. Maybe that's stupid, but
Kirby he owns GWR Services, which is that welding shop right before you get to Highway 90. It's like the last building across from the new Danos location. And if you pass, you'll see him filled with cars and equipment and forklifts and just things. And he's incredibly busy, but he works with his dad, and his dad is still if you pass and you see welding sparks flying, his dad is probably going to be on the gun.
Yep.
And those two are pretty impressive to work with, and they can make anything. And they built all kind of custom things for us. meat rails, pots, dippers, and scoops, and nets, and you name it. We draw it up, tell them what we want, and a couple days later or 4 years later, it's in our hands.
Kirby, if you're listening to this, I still need some more jerky sticks.
But yeah, if you got a special project, all of our stuff needed to be stainless, and there's lots of welders in the area that claim they can weld stainless, thin stainless, but it's just might not be true. When push comes to shove, they might back out, and that's what happened to us until we met Kirby. So
while we're on that subject, there were a lot of people like instrumental in building a new market. So I'm gonna give a few shout outs. So Synergy Bank and Cassie Brancato were like hugely beneficial. They were easy to work with and really helped just iron out the loan process. Ray and Beau Bourgeois are the contractors that built the building, and I cannot say enough amazing things about those guys. If you have any commercial buildings that you're looking at doing, dude, just go with these guys. They're honest. They do a really good job, and yeah, stick with them. ASC's out of Lafayette, Acadian Scales and Equipment. They did a lot of our heavy equipment, and they still help us out a lot with repairs and everything else still going on. Rodriguez Electric. So Chris had either just retired or was about to retire when we started the building, but man, he was still here and still helped us out, and those guys are awesome. Pat and Scott Grabert were the plumbers, and they're awesome. In fact, they just came out the other day to hook up the generator. Richard Supply, Ryan and his team helped us out with some of the kitchen equipment, but more importantly, they helped us design the kitchen, which was way over my head. And speaking of design, we have Kevin Groh with GFP Design. They did the architecture plans or whatever you call that. Did a great job. I mentioned Kirby already, and then of course my wife Chelsea. There's nobody else that had to put up with me for the year or so of building this thing, but she was awesome to bounce ideas off of and pick out paint colors and bricks. Cause that's all the type of stuff you don't think about. You're like, this building's going to be awesome. And then, Mr. Ray will call you and say, hey, what kind of bricks you want for the front? I'm like, what? I never once thought about that. What color you want the walls? Dude, I don't know.
Yeah.
I want them wall colored.
Yeah.
The walls at the old market, if you ever pay attention, the brick wall on the right inside used to be the outside wall, and they painted it like a mint green. It's a nasty little color, but I love it. I'm never going to change it. Yeah, wall's a wall.
I remember you talking to, the guys that did the flooring.
Oh,
and
A&R.
Yeah, I remember you talking to them, and they're like, yeah, what you want to go with? And you're like, well, that stuff at the old market, it's got like the little, kind of like a digital print on it.
Like a little pebbles.
And could you get that? And they're like, are you sure? I mean, you could have anything. You can get, there's lots of new technology out there with flooring.
I think they still make that. Maybe we could get it. Yeah, but why?
And they're like, what color? And you're like, this just exactly what's on the old market, the same thing. And he's like, that you want that color and you want that in the new building? Yeah. All right. Okay.
Hey, a lot of conversations like that, dude. People
same thing with the countertops. Same thing with the paint colors.
With the countertops.
But yeah,
like, you want that?
Beau wanted it to look exactly like the old market. So when all of our old customers walk into Gray for the first time, we kind of wanted them to go, oh man, this is cool. It feels like I'm in Thibodaux.
When you're standing at a counter for it to look the same.
Right.
I don't know that I succeeded all the way, but I tried.
Right.
It was the only aesthetic that I considered in the entire building.
Right. You got this big new fancy building, and we kind of wanted it to feel a little more homey, than it was looking, Speaking of like Chelsea and family and stuff, like, I'm sure you were up every night, especially when things started moving along. I'm sure you're up up late or up early with ideas or new, solutions to problems or coming up with new problems. And that's like a 24/7 thing. So how do you kind of balance work life during something as exciting as this, something you've been working on? It's really hard to get, tunnel vision and kind of forget about everything else. How do you balance all that?
Well, it is hard, first of all, but second of all, I think Dad was good at it and Papa was good at it, and I learned it from them. Is that when they weren't here, they weren't here. They didn't really bring work home with them. And so, for example, Papa and my dad always took one day off during the week, and they'd usually go fishing. But whatever it was, when they were off on their Tuesday, like that was it. They didn't think about work, and Dad was always like that. So I kind of I don't know, developed that way myself. So I was always good at separating the two. But that being said, yeah, when you're in the middle of a Hurricane Ida or a new building on the verge of opening up, and you're thinking about all the new hires you're about to have to make, and did you think to do this? Did you think to do that? Yeah, I'm sure I wasn't the most pleasant person to be around, but we're still married.
It's something, right?
Yeah.
Man, hurricanes and COVID. Remember pulling up to the market that next day after the hurricane?
Yeah. How can I forget?
Boy.
It was
all the oak trees across the street, all the beautiful 300-year-old oak trees were snapped and branches everywhere.
Oh, just getting here was an adventure.
Yeah. Remember we had to pull that big pine tree and snap it along with the chassis of my truck.
Well, the only thing that could have been worse was what happened to Brody, man. Poor Brody.
Yeah.
He came all the way back from drill to help us out one day.
To slaughter a cow.
Yeah. And he ran over a telephone pole. Almost all the way.
He hit it hard.
Yep.
Brand new truck.
Yep.
Done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what were the hardest struggles that came with COVID or the hurricane? I know supply issues were big for both, but with anything, with lack of supply or all this stuff or new rules, it forces you to make decisions. Things like mask mandates, and do you go up on pricing right now because rounds just went up $2 a pound? Do you hold out to pass the savings along to the customer, or are you scared and you need to go up now? How do you make those decisions?
So COVID was so hard at first because of the uncertainty. They were shutting businesses down left and right, and we thought, like, dude, what the hell are we gonna do if they come in and shut us down? So I guess once we got over that fear, everything was the only other huge issue to navigate was the supply chain issues, man. It was a nightmare trying to find supplies, and then when you did, the prices were just unbelievable. Meat prices had shot up, in some cases double or more.
300%. Yeah.
Rounds had gone from like $2.50 to $9 a pound.
Right.
And, some of that stuff is just like, there's no way to make money and buy that.
Mm-hmm.
And then some things you can't get. So what you do?
Mm-hmm.
How you make boudin without pork, But so that was hard and stressful. And then having to watch prices every single time you ordered, change the prices every day, and then figure out what to do when somebody in the market had COVID. Do you shut the whole place down? Do you tell them to go home for how long? And it was all a mess, but
so
it all worked.
Explain what our plan was that we implemented for COVID and for, what did they call it? What did they call the
You talking about with the employees?
Yeah, I forgot the term that everyone was using. You had to isolate. What would they call it? Quarantine. The quarantine. So explain that.
I think we had 3 teams. And so, each team, which it kind of lucked out because we had started hiring for the new market at that point.
Okay, that's where I was going, was hiring. So how many employees did we have, let's say the year before the expansion?
Probably right under 30.
Under 30. And
we probably only needed 20. But, we had made some key hires we had to duplicate a lot of the key positions.
Right.
And so, and we couldn't hire them day one because now you got a manager and it's his first day on a job. That's not how we like to do things. So yeah, we had started early. We had extra employees, luckily. And yeah, we separated us into 3 teams. So we're each going to work, I'm trying to remember the details, but I think we each worked 1 week at a time. Everyone else was instructed to go home and don't catch COVID. That was their only job. And if somebody on your team that week caught COVID, then everybody goes home and now they're quarantining and the next team comes in.
Mm-hmm.
We come up with the most ridiculous things and you think, I don't know, you're just trying to keep the place open. So what do you do?
At first it's funny and then it sounds like it might be the best plan. I remember your first plan was, well, let's do this. We just can't all catch COVID at the same time, correct?
Yeah, I was going to go to the hospital and start licking doorknobs.
Yeah, he said.
That way, after I caught it, I could be safe and come back to work.
He's like, okay, me and you can't catch it at the same time. And then Phil and Lacey can't catch it at the same time. But if me and Phil catch it, that's okay. Or if you and Phil catch it, that's okay. Yeah. That's kind of how it was. So Beau was like, I'm going to go to the hospital and lick some doorknobs. And you go to the camp and just go hunting. And then as soon as I catch it, we'll switch. I'll go to the camp and then you hurry up and come back and catch it so that we can be done with it.
Yeah. For some reason we decided to table that plan, but anyway, it worked out. We stayed open and I like to think that we helped some people out because we were able to keep prices down because of just we do things a little differently than the mass market grocery store stuff.
Yeah, it was scary times. It was emotional times. It was we had employees with family members catching it and falling ill and some bad stuff. It was pretty nasty for a very long time. And this doesn't stop. The business doesn't stop because COVID's happening, and people still have to provide for their families, and everyone's worried, and we don't have the answers, but you kind of have to. I don't know. That's where the leadership comes in at. You have to manage expectations, and you have to show everyone that you'll figure it out, right? And I think that's what you're good at. Is I think anyone who's worked with you, worked under you, I think they're always confident that even if they're not capable, you are, so if they just attach themselves to you, somehow we'll get through it. That's how I've always felt. So now we're here and we're in the new market and it's been a year. What was the first year like?
It was actually a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Everything was smooth. Turns out we did have some good hires, which I knew about. I knew that we did, but people like Phil and Lacey and Brett and Mark and a lot of these other key members that we had hired with the intention of, each one is going to have to be able to do their job on their own. And they all succeeded kind of beyond our wildest expectations,
Yeah.
So that took a lot of pressure off of me. And then it was just a matter of trying to figure out the best way to do things.
Sure. And man, I'm interested to start, talking to some other business owners around here because it's like we don't get to see what it's like. We don't really have anything to compare to. We just know the way we do it and we know our people. But these other companies, like, man, if they don't have a Phil, a Brett, a Mark, a Lacey, a Brody, a Stacy, like if they don't have that, what are they gonna do?
Yeah.
So I'm interested to kind of dig into other people and figure out if they do have that or if they're just winging it and they're just doing it alone, that's not the way to go.
It's not.
It's not. You have to trust people. You have to give up some of the control. You have to let people's good ideas blossom, and only good things will come out of it. You know, they'll respect you more for it. They'll trust you more, and you have to, man. You can't do it alone.
That was honestly the hardest part for me. And of course it happened before we opened. But yeah, the hardest part was letting go of some of that, because I was the same way as my dad, you know. Every boudin day, I'm in the back running boudin. I'm on the front making sausage every morning. I'm making sure that this is happening and that's happening. And that's all fine. I don't mind doing that. But ultimately, it's not something that is sustainable with two places. And, you know, it's not really how you want to live your life, scared to death to go on a vacation or be sick, you know?
Right.
So you need people that you trust and can do a damn good job. And so just as an example, like, you know, we were aware, let's just say, of some negative views of the market on our customer service over the years, right? And so, you know, Shane and I decided that we needed to do something about it. And it wasn't in our wheelhouse. It was not something we ever once thought about, right? We thought this is what we grew up thinking good customer service was. If whatever you want is going to be the best that it can be made, and you're going to get it as fast as you can. And that's the only thing that matters. I think if you asked anybody that worked here in those days, that would be their answer. And you might not have gotten a hi or even a smile, but you were going to get the best product that we can make, and you were going to get it as fast as we could possibly get it for you. And we needed some outside help to fix that. Okay. So, like, just as an example, my dad kind of taught me how to hire, sort of. And this is how he would hire new people. He would ask them, you know, when he would ask them to come in, and then he would watch them walk from their car to the counter. And if they walked from their car to the counter really fast, then he would hire them. And if they didn't, he would not hire them. That's how he picked people to hire. And I mean, who's to say that that's wrong? It worked for us for a long time. But, well, now we take in some other factors. And yeah, anyway, all this goes to say is we hired Phil in 2018, let's say. And Phil Cass is like customer service savant. If you don't know who he is, if you come into the new market when he's working, you will immediately know who he is. He's just got that it factor, and he's worked in so many customer service related industries, and he knows how to do it. He knows how to hire for it. He knows how to train for it. And all of those are things that I didn't know how to do. So yeah, that's just an example of like hiring for skills that you don't have. And Phil's been might have to cut that. Phil's been an amazing member of the team. So
skill is weird. You know, sometimes you think you have too much skill. Sometimes you think you have all the skills. It's very easy for this to happen to anyone in a leadership position. Just because you're good at one thing doesn't mean you're good at the rest of the things. And you have to know where those lines are. And sometimes that means you used to be the best at it, you know, but when you got guys that have been here for 10 years, you can't say you're the best at it anymore. You know, when they've been doing the boudin for 10 years, you know, we're no longer the best at it. And we have to learn to trust those guys' opinions. And I do think we're good at that. And maybe we just learned to get good at it, but that is super important. You can't be like that. You can't hold people back. And you know, you're not always the one in every room, you know. And I think that's probably common for business owners, is to never let that go. And they always have to be the one that has final say on, you know, complicated situations that they may not have touched in in several years because they've hired that part of the business out to someone.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have a wide range of skill here. We've got Mark and Stacy that just hit 10 years with us. That's pretty cool. Historically, the market has had high tenure, and we've had, people that have made careers out of this place, damn near 20 years, several of them. And I think that's something to be proud of as a small business, to be able to do that, and if we can do it with, 10 people, I guess next is, can we do that with a staff of 40 or 50? Can we keep some, multiple 10-year hires, 20-year? So what's next? What's the plan? What's the plan this year? What's the plan next year? This will be so last year was our first Christmas in this place. And I guess you're saying it went sort of as planned?
I don't know about as planned, but it went smooth.
Yeah.
Everything worked out. No catastrophes, no burnt batches of boudin or whatever. So yeah, from here on out, I think it's more of the same. So keep doing what we're doing, keep training the relatively new employees that we have, try to get more efficient. But you know this as well as I do, we have different goals for each market. The goal kind of for the new market is to grow. Might do a little more advertising next year or two. But for the old market, it's to get more efficient and, cross train people and just get it kind of back to how it was when we were kids, which is really exciting for me. And I think my dad really likes it too. Every time he goes over there, I think he gets excited seeing it like it used to be.
Mm-hmm. What Beau is talking about is over the past few years, we've like split into sort of departments or like specialties for everyone. So like we're hiring people based on a particular role that they're going to fill, which is very new to the way it used to be when we were kids. And the way we came into it was everyone did everything. You started in the back, you started as help, you started as a hand, and you prove yourself with, attaining new skills and building trust with people. And you get to learn, you stick around long enough, you get to learn the next thing, the next, more important thing. And it keeps going. And eventually, if you've been there for 10 years, you can answer the phone, you can clean a pot, you can make boudin, you can smoke jerky, you can smoke sausage, you can take in a deer order, you can break down a calf, you can cut pork chops, you can check people out on the register, you can do everything. And, from the, I don't know what year, but up until we split, we kind of got rid of that and we sort of had back of house, front of house. And that's how it kind of stayed. If you're hired for the front of house, you don't know how to make ground meat in the back. You don't know how to hang jerky. And we're slowly trying to get back to the way it was because it is much more efficient. And I think it might be a little more fulfilling for people. You get to see some different things throughout the day, and it's a little less mundane and maybe a little funner.
Yeah, it was absolutely. And it was tough as the old market got bigger and busier. It got harder to do those things, right? Like the guys in the back, because they were so busy making things all the time, they couldn't really get to the front to help out, and vice versa. So it started specializing on its own, and then we just kind of made it more so. And I guess when you combine that with like training new hires and turnover, it got to be too much because you've got this person that's been there for 2 years and they've learned everything, and now they're gone, and it takes 2 more years to train somebody to do everything, whereas it takes 2 weeks to train somebody how to wait on a customer, and if that's all they need to do, then you're done. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's a tough call. Yeah. But since the new market's open, the old market's it's slowed down a little bit, and so it's a lot more viable and makes more sense.
Training's hard here because we're holding on to the sort of Wild West mentality that we have here compared to a supermarket, whereas they have to have all these rules, put down onto them, and it becomes less, less of a custom experience for the customer. You only get what you see. Whereas we try to hang on to this vibe of we can do anything. If you want it, we'll do it for you because we're allowed to and because we know how.
Yeah.
And that's very hard to train an employee to understand all of the complicated requests and ways to answer customers. And, without, if a customer asks for something they've never heard of, avoiding that employee just giving them a no, sorry. We try not to be a no, sorry, we don't have that place. We try to be I'm not sure what that is. Let me go ask the butcher. And then the butcher comes up and the butcher says, absolutely, but I'm going to use a different cut. Would you mind if I use a different cut for that? Tell me what you're cooking. What are you trying to achieve? And I'm going to help you through this process versus, check out our stocked meat counter. That's what you see is what you get. We don't want to be viewed as that. And with that comes really hard training, and we've had to implement, SOP binders and all this stuff that big corporations do. We've had to kind of dabble with all that stuff, and
I hate it.
It's complicated, but it seems to be necessary, even if it's just a phase we had to go through for the time, and we can kind of get back to just kind of winging it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, whenever we opened, we planned on hiring, I forget how many now, 50 or probably 50 people, right? And so, yeah, we needed all that going in, because how do you train 50 brand new people to open a store? I think some places like a Raising Cane's or whatever, like they have all this figured out. They know how to open a new store easy.
Mm-hmm.
They've done it hundreds of times or whatever, but this is our first time, and so we had to figure it all out. But yeah, some of that's hard to get around, and that's what I like about what's happening at the old market is I think a lot of that is doable and coming back. But just as an example with your stuff, man, I can't tell you how many customers I've waited on that either wanted something we didn't have or was asking for something kind of ambiguous, like beef chops, right? Is the famous ask. I want beef chops. Well, of course, a beef chop is almost any cut off of a calf. So, when you're asked for something like that, my immediate question was, what you cooking? Oh, I'm frying them. Well, then you want rib chops. I'm smothering. Well, you probably want chuck chops. We're out of chuck chops, but I'm smothering something down. What you got? Well, we got shoulder steaks. They're even better. So that's the kind of stuff that's so hard to train, and it's not even something you can train people to do. It's like, and this is what I do with all the butchers. I'm like, guys, take stuff home, cook it. If you're not sure how to cook it, ask me. Come to my house, I'll cook it for you. Like, you have to experience all of those things to know what they're doing and what's going on.
There's no book for the way we do it. We do it a bit different than, maybe the bearded butchers on YouTube. The way they break down an animal is a bit different than the way we traditionally do it here, because people don't cook the same things down here as they do up north. And, they're looking for different cuts. The demand is higher on certain parts of the animal and lower on other parts. And it might be the opposite here, just based on culture and recipes and availability of other things that people need, or, what people like to do. And it's very...
Shane, ask me why we break a calf like we do.
Why?
Because that's how Dad and Papa talk. Exactly. I don't know why.
And no, I had a thought earlier. You were talking about customer service, and the best example I can give people is we were very much similar to like the soup Nazi on Seinfeld.
If you look hard enough, there is a review that might refer to a girl that works for us currently as the soup Nazi.
We, we want you to get in line. We want you to wait your turn. Be specific. Tell us what you want. We're going to get you exactly what you want. It's going to be the best thing you can find, and it was going to come to you fast, and then we need to wait on the next person. Like that was our view of customer service. It really was, and we loved it. It's fun. It's fun to fly around the building and
Yeah, I did love it.
run in each other and all this, and grab people's stuff as fast as we can and send them. But we've learned that some people don't like that. They need to be schmoozed a bit, and got a little better at slowing down and just kind of having the conversations with people and making sure that their experience is nice. Is what they wanted, not what we think everyone wants.
Yeah, Phil told me something kind of profound that helped change my opinion on it or whatever. And it's, if a customer has a problem, or even if they don't, the goal isn't for you to be right. It's for the customer to leave happy, whatever that means. And that even includes just them having a regular shopping experience. Even if they don't have a problem, you want them to leave happy. And that's different for every person. Now, maybe not hugely different, but that salesman in the morning is in a hurry. He doesn't care if you're nice to him. He needs to get the hell out so that he can drive 300 more miles to Houston or whatever, right? Whereas, the little old lady that's shopping in the afternoon, she might want to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be able to read people, and Phil's good at that.
So I heard you say one time, I don't know if I asked you, I think, I don't know, I may have asked you, it was either me or someone else, could have been a reporter, I don't know. But you were asked, like, what's it like to own this meat market? It's been around we're in the fourth generation, and 133 years in existence. What's it like to be the the owner? And you said something that stood out to me. You said something along the lines of, I don't look at myself as the owner. Like, no one can own this thing. Like, this thing is bigger than we can be, kind of making sure it can get to the next generation. I remember you saying that. I remember it making a lot of sense. And why do you feel why do you feel that way? Or can you explain that more?
I guess I think I said something along the lines of, it doesn't really feel like mine. I'm looking after it for now until the next generation comes along. And, hopefully that'll be my kids. But if it's not something they're interested in doing, my dad never put pressure on me. It doesn't have to be them, right? It could be Shane's kids. It could be Brody's kids. I've got 36 first cousins. It'll be somebody's kids. But the point is, I'm the fourth. It's a little cliche, but the Isaac Newton quote of standing on the shoulders of giants. It's probably a bit much, but it is true in the sense that the market is its own thing. It's its own entity at this point, and I'm not. I guess I don't know. It's a weird thing to talk about, but I feel like I'm hanging on to it. I'm gonna, I plan on leaving my impact, which hopefully is this new location, and even the new location for me was, to me, it's an insurance policy, right? This building has to survive, and what happened if the old one burnt down? Well, now if the old one burns down, no problem. Everybody can come work over here until we rebuild it. Yeah, I wanted to make sure it survived to the next generation, and I guess that's my ultimate goal. Yeah.
What do you think it's going to be like then? When our kids are in their 30s, you think this meat business will be any different? Will people still, what are they going to stop buying then? It's kind of weird to think about that. Will people stop buying the veal cuts? Will they stop, smoking's trendy right now? Will they stop smoking meats? I don't know.
It's a great question, Shane. And unfortunately we are, or not unfortunately, maybe fortunately, but we're ultimately at the mercy of our customers. And so like this kind of haunts me that happened to Pawpaw, right? So Pawpaw was selling mostly fresh cuts of meat, okay, for I don't know, a long time. He would slaughter cows, pigs, chickens, and sell the cuts. That was mostly what he did. The whole purpose of boudin and hogshead cheese and even sausage and these other things was to find a way to sell the stuff that was going bad, right? You cook it and turn it into boudin, or the parts that you can't sell, right? If you can't, nobody wants pork liver this week, it's going into boudin. Nobody wants a whole hog head, so we'll make hogshead cheese. Same thing with the sausage, like smoked sausage. As far as I know, it didn't start off as a seasoning. It started off as a way to make your sausage last a few more days so you could sell it. So that's what Papa was doing, and all of the specialty stuff was small. It was small. It was his leftovers, and it's not necessarily what people were shopping for. Okay, and then in the 70s or late 60s, I forget the year. Of course, this was before my time, but Papa said they opened the first supermarkets in Thibodaux, and it killed his business. So he went from slaughtering lots of chickens to now the grocery stores with their mass-produced selling chicken farms are selling chickens cleaned and all that for cheaper than he can buy a live chicken. So, like, what you do, you can't sell chickens no more. Nobody's gonna buy your chickens. They ain't that much specialer than the grocery store chicken. And then, of course, they were selling cuts of meat too that were, cheaper and stuff. And so, what did he do? He adapted. He started making more of the stuff that we're known for today, like the boudin, the hogshead cheese, the smoked sausages, and the different sausage flavors, and stuff you couldn't get at the grocery store. So I'm sure something like that could happen again. I hope it doesn't. I hope we can keep everything status quo, but we'll see. I definitely hope it's not my problem at that point.
Sorry, kids.
Yep.
Man, I wonder what would you advise if your kids want to go to school, they want to go to college, and their plan was to take this business over. Any field of study you think they should?
Yeah, not math. Math didn't help too much
because we have calculators, right?
Yeah. I probably would have taken some more business classes. I guess I don't know enough about it to think that they would help me run a business, but some financial classes would have helped so that there wasn't such a learning curve on reading all the financial statements and all that other stuff. That way I would have a better understanding of all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially from the get-go. That's what you really need to figure out if you need to cut labor or go up on prices or try to find cheaper supplies or whatever that helps you make a lot of decisions without having to figure it out on your own.
Mm-hmm. The old market, if anyone's ever been inside the back of the old market, when we say that there's nothing special to it, we mean it, but also we don't. I mean, there's a lot of things that are special to it. Mainly the ingenuity of the place. And I think that's something we were passed down, right? And it's something that I think, guys that are building businesses today, they just didn't get a glimpse of that. They didn't get a glimpse of using something until it breaks and then fixing it and then using it again. And if another thing breaks, then putting those two machines together to make something else and use that until it breaks.
The thing that helps us too with that though, Shane, is we still remember doing all those things without the machine, right? Mm-hmm. Like if the jerky slicer breaks, if this was any other business like that relied on a machine, they'd be like, well, I guess we don't have jerky anymore. But we still know how to make it by hand. It wouldn't even slow us down. Well, it would slow us down, but
right. But man, the building and the equipment has just been fixed and fixed and fixed and fixed again.
Papa could do a lot with a little, and he never threw anything away.
Right.
Including his Ziploc bags and aluminum foil.
That would be my advice to a new business is don't compare yourself to any other businesses worry about what your goal is. What are you trying to provide for people, or what's the skill or the service that you're offering? And that has to be the first thing. Like that thing, that product, that service, that skill, that is the important thing, and all the other stuff can come later, or it doesn't have to come at all. You don't need the fancy stuff. You just need the things that are required to make your product. So my advice would be, bare bones it for a long time, because we didn't have to go through it, but we did, and I would attribute a lot of the success to that. I think if Pawpaw was worried about putting a new awning on the building, what would have suffered because of it? Where would we have maybe slipped along the way? And when you get, as we've experienced, when you build a new building, things can get out of control really quickly, because if you got a new room, then you need a new chair to put in the room. Whereas that concept didn't exist before we built the new building, and I think we're settling back into the ways of old, here. But I think not these days. If you don't start off with that mentality, you'll burn up quickly.
Yeah, my advice for new businesses is put 100% of your effort or time or whatever into the product or service, because that's the only thing that's going to make you money, right? If you don't have something people want, then nothing else matters. The pretty building, all the employees, none of that does anything for you. So everything you do should be tied to that, right? If you need to hire an employee, it should be because you need to make more of something, or you need help with something, but they need to be on board and can do it. That it all needs to be tied into that.
Mm-hmm. And you can't forget. I would say they shouldn't forget this, is that if you're building a new meat market, and you think that you need to build this, fancy state-of-the-art smoker, and you need to post your picture on Instagram of your brand new smoker, and that's the focal point, is how awesome and new this thing is. There may be a business down the road that gets they're bragging about their beat up, used, rusted up, ugly thing, and that's working for them too. So it isn't about the things, the things that you use. I think that can be maybe a trap for some people.
Yeah, for sure, especially in this day and age.
And I think it just comes from social media, and seeing everywhere else, and seeing the way everyone else does things. It doesn't have to be the way you do things.
Yeah, and don't get something because it makes it easier. Get something because it does it better.
Yep. Yeah, I remember talking about this before we really started making the hires to kind of double up on staff and roles and everything. We talked about, the fact that you have to get better before you get bigger. And it's a easy trap to just want to get bigger, and that you're assuming that makes you better. Having 2 locations doesn't make you better than having 1 location.
Yeah, it cost us a lot of money to double hire all of our managers for over a year.
Right.
But it made the product better, because when we opened, they weren't, they knew what they were doing. Heck, Phil, we hired in 18 or 19. Yeah, and we opened in 2023. So,
right.
When we hired him, we told him we were going to open next year.
Anything else? I think this was good.
No, this was fun.
I think we got a lot said. You and I can sit and tell stories for hours, I'm sure, and maybe we'll do that next time. Pick some key stories that we can just reminisce about.
There's some good ones.
Well, all right. I think that's enough for today, Beau, and we'll get back and we'll do this more and tell some more stories, let people in a little deeper.
Sounds good. Thanks, Shane.
All right, later.
Later.
All right, that's it for this episode of the Miracles of Meat podcast. We ask that you share it with at least one person in your life that you think needs to hear it. If you got a little something from it, you got some little goose pimples, or just gave you some feel goods, send it to someone else. Let them feel that too. And if you loved it, please leave us a 5-star review. That'll really help out. And if you only loved it like 4 stars worth, please do not leave a review. Same thing with the 1 through 3. Not interested in any of those, only 5 stars. If you have any personal questions or comments about the episode, shoot them over to Bourgeois Meat Market on Facebook or Instagram, and we'll reach back out. And if you have any ideas for any cool future guests, please shoot those over too. We're always interested in hearing who else is out there and what kind of cool stories we might be able to bring into this place. See you next time. Thanks for listening.